Short barrels, 40 Smith & Wesson versus 357 Magnum. Today I have that Blazer ammunition that I tested in the past, that new Blazer 40 Smith & Wesson brass case jacket hollow point. I tested that in a 5-inch M&P in the past, and I'm going to test it now today in my 3.2-inch Taurus G2C. I tested the 357 Magnum in the past in my 4-inch barrel Smith & Wesson 686. Today I'm going to test it in my 2-inch barrel Taurus 605. So our 40 Smith & Wesson is rated at 1,015 feet per second. Our 357 Magnum is rated at 1,150 feet per second. So we're going to see what we get in the short barrels. I tested them in the longer barrels already, and they performed pretty well. So we'll see what we get in the short barrels. So I'm going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy we get at the same time. Then I'm going to do my 10% clear ballistic test. We're going to go into plain clear ballistics to see what the best potential of those cartridges are. No denim in the way or anything like that to clog a hollow point, to see if we get bullet expansion. And then after that, we'll do more of a real world simulation where we have 4 layers of sweatshirt material on this first 3-inch piece that represents our pectoral muscle. After that, we'll have a 1/4-inch medium density fiberboard to represent hitting ribs or sternum. So we'll do a plain clear ballistic shot with each caliber, and then a real world simulation with each. And then I will shoot it at the steel target to see what kind of practical accuracy I can get on steel. So let's get started with this test. I forgot to mention the bullet weights. The 40 Smith & Wesson is a 180 grain jacket at hollow point. Our 357 Magnum is a 158 grain jacket at hollow point. So our 40 Smith & Wesson is rated at 1,015 feet per second. Our 357 Magnum is rated at 1,150 feet per second. In the 5-inch barrel with the 40 Smith & Wesson, what I averaged was 988 feet per second. So let's see how much velocity we lose by going down to a short barrel. See how close we get to 988 feet per second with our 40 Smith & Wesson, about 5 yards from that target. .927. 906, 888, 903, 925. So we are losing quite a bit of velocity. Now our 357 Magnum rated at 1,150 feet per second. I actually got 1,207 feet per second in the 4-inch barrel. So let's see what we get in our 2-inch barrel here. See how close we get to 1,207 feet per second. 357 Magnum. 1,046, 1,002, 1,006, 1,023. So we are losing quite a bit more velocity with this than the 40 Smith & Wesson. So let's put in both of these velocities down to a level that might be below expansion threshold. So let's hit our ballistics gel block and see if we get any hollow point expansion, see how these compare. All right, our first shot in the plain clear ballistics to see what the best potential of these cartridges are. No denim or anything like that to get in the way to clog a hollow point. Hopefully we can get some hollow point expansion. So let's hit that with our 40 Smith & Wesson. All right. Hit that with our 357 Magnum. Let's go take a look. All right, so interesting performance. We did get hollow point expansion with both of these, but that 357 Magnum went a little bit deep. But that's what happened with our longer barrel test as well. I think we actually had the same penetration through the 5-inch barrel, even though we had a lot more velocity. Interesting. So our 40 Smith & Wesson, really good energy dump and tearing, as is the 357 Magnum. Overall, really good looking. What we got here with our 40 Smith & Wesson, I think just like the 5-inch barrel, we got 18 inches exactly of penetration, and we have some good expansion. Now with our 357 Magnum, we again got some good expansion, but we over penetrated to about 22¼ inches of penetration. I think that's very similar to what I was getting in the longer barrel. That's very interesting. So let's put on our fabric, put in our rib simulation, see how they can continue to compare in our real world simulation. All right, our real world simulation, 4 layers of sweatshirt material, 3 inches of clear ballistics to represent a pectoral muscle, 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard to represent hitting ribs or sternum. Let's see what we get here with our 40 Smith & Wesson. Let me set that back up. We'll hit it with the 357 Magnum. All right, 357 Magnum real world simulation. Let's see what this does. Let's go take a look. All right, so what we're seeing here is very interesting. It looks like the 40 Smith & Wesson continued to be a good cartridge, even in a short barrel, but our 357 Magnum had some trouble with our real world simulation. So I don't know if it's hitting the rib simulation or if it's you know, the fabric that caused an issue, but we can definitely see exactly what is going on here. Our 357 Magnum impact on top indicates that is definitely tumbling. So it's a 158 grain bullet, but I don't know if it's my gun or if it's the velocity of this particular load or what it is, but it's not stabilizing in a short barrel here. So we can definitely see some tumbling marks right here. Same type of marks we see with Extreme Defender type bullets. So we had some definite tumbling going on. So yeah, it's a little heavy for a short barrel to continue to go straight. It started, and that's not necessarily meaning that my gun isn't shooting it straight. I think it is. I think we'll see accuracy on target, but what it means is after hitting this right here, it's just not enough velocity. It does not have enough velocity for it to continue to move straight, so it starts to tumble. So with our 40 Smith & Wesson, we have really good performance still. We have a penetration of about 17.25 inches of penetration. A little bit less expansion, but I still see some expansion. So overall, our 40 Smith & Wesson is a pass here. It does pretty well. Our 357 Magnum, again, over penetration. I don't see any expansion. We're at about 21.5 inches of penetration. So, you know, honestly, the 357 Mag didn't do that bad. It didn't extremely over penetrate or anything like that. But I would like to see some hollow point expansion. There's plenty of rounds out there that will expand out of a short barrel. So yeah, I'm not sure on this one, but our 40 Smith & Wesson looks fantastic. So let's pull these out of the block. We'll take a close-up look. Then I'll shoot our steel, see what kind of practical accuracy and shootability I can get with these. Here's a close-up look at these bullets going through plain gel. Really good performance going on here. Here is our 40 Smith & Wesson. There's some really good expansion with that. Really consistent expansion. Looks pretty decent overall. Now our 357 Magnum. Again, very, very good expansion going through our plain gel. Very good, consistent expansion. Looks like a plated bonded type bullet. Very nice. Now going through our medium density fiberboard, things changed up quite a bit here with one of these. With our 40 Smith & Wesson, not so much. This is pretty typical of a good defensive round where it'll get a little bit smaller going through fabric and rib simulation. So our 40 here, our real world simulation, continued to perform quite well. And when we look at our 357 Magnum though, this is pretty bad performance. It looks like probably what happened is it caught the edge of that rib simulation and started to tumble. Not particularly good expansion, and that's really due to the fact that the velocity is pretty low. You know, we should see 1100, 1150 feet per second with a good 158 grain bullet for 357 Magnum, but we saw like barely over 1,000. So not particularly great performance from a short barrel with our 357 Magnum, but surprisingly very good with our 40 Smith & Wesson. So that's a close-up look at those bullets. All right, 12 yards from the target. I'm just going to pull these guns up and shoot at the target as fast as I think I can hit the target. Wearing a glove because that 357 Magnum had a little bit of blast coming out that cylinder gap, causing me to flinch a little bit. So we'll see what I can do here from 12 yards. 40 Smith & Wesson. All right. 357 Magnum. Let's see what this does. Right. Definitely a lot harder to control this. I missed one. A lot of recoil with this, a lot more than what I thought there was going to be, because in the 4-inch barrel there was very little recoil. A lot of times little recoil in my longer barrel will also equate to less in the short barrel, but in this I'm not seeing that. A lot of felt recoil with this. So let me paint that back up, and I'll back up a little bit and continue to shoot the steel. All right, 75 yards from the target just for fun. There is no practical purpose to this. I'm just doing it for fun, for a challenge to see if I can. And because I did shoot at the steel from 75 yards with the longer barrels, I believe. So if I remember right, the 40 did pretty well for accuracy at this distance, but I had trouble with the 357 Magnum. So just for fun, I'm going to see what these short barrels will do, if I can even hit the target one time from 75 yards, because that's pretty far, and these guns aren't great. So let's see what I can do with our 40 here. Definitely not very good, but honestly a little better than what I thought I was going to see for accuracy. So it's doable. Now this, I'm not sure what to expect with this. Typically stuff that's heavy and heavy recoiling, heavy bullets, heavy recoiling in a short barrel, they'll jump over the target. So I'm going to see where these are hitting. I'm going to try to see where they're hitting. So I'm going to go single action, aim center, try to keep my eye on where this is going. 357 Magnum. Not so great, but at least I hit it a couple times. I think they are pretty much hitting point of aim, except maybe a hair high. I'll keep going. So I experimented with a few different holds, and I found the most hits I got were aiming right at the shoulder area. So I honestly think this is just as accurate, or maybe even more accurate than what I was with the 4-inch barrel with this particular load. So yeah, interesting overall here. So what I'm going to say about this ammo is I'm thoroughly surprised with that 40 Smith & Wesson. I thought for sure we were probably going to get the velocity we got, and if that happened, it's not going to expand, because honestly that bullet looks very similar to a Remington HTP, whatever they use. Obviously it's not, because I think I've seen tests of that and it pretty much never expands. So this is a good bullet, whatever bullet this is. It's not a Federal High Shock. Some people were saying they thought it was a High Shock or an XTP. It's not that. It's whatever this bullet is. It's not those, but honestly it's a pretty good designed bullet, because we were seeing lower than rated velocity and got good expansion and not really any over penetration with the 5-inch barrel, and we got almost identical performance with the shorter barrel with, you know, 80 feet per second less velocity or something along those lines. So that did pretty well. Now with our 357 Magnum, this is targeted as target ammo, or marketed as, I should say, target ammo. So the fact that it performed really well in the 4-inch barrel really surprised me. And the fact that it's not performing that great in the snub nose, you know, that doesn't surprise me either, or that doesn't surprise me, I should say. But it's actually performing better than what I would have thought it would perform. And probably the reason why I was able to hit from this distance with the snub nose is because it is a hollow point, more that bullet weight shifted towards the rear. It's going to be a little more accurate than like a soft point or something like that. But honestly, for what it is, it didn't perform that bad. Now, I would not pick this particular 357 Magnum load myself because it is a 158 grain. And even though it had some pretty low velocity, with a 158 grain from a snub, it's got a ton of muzzle jump, so it is very hard to control. With this 40 Smith & Wesson, it performed pretty well. Recoil wasn't too bad and actually performed quite well. So I'm still pleasantly surprised with this stuff that it performed as good as it did. So very interesting here. So that's what you get today. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.